Thank you so much for joining us. If you've been here all afternoon, I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this afternoon. My name is Shellie Reid. I am the manager of the Legal Services National Technology Assistance Project, and we are here having an afternoon focusing on generative AI, but going a little bit beyond the basics than what you may have seen or heard before. So this for this session, I have assembled um, a group of people, several of whom have been my mentors since I was in law school, and others that I have met through them and because of them, and then others that I've met along the way. And I am so thrilled to share these great people with you. I have Kat Moon, Dennis Kennedy, Kelly Raker, and Jennifer Wondracek with you. And Jennifer, I may have just slaughtered your name. So when you introduce, please let us know how you actually pronounce your name, not my poor pronunciation. Um, so we're gonna start with a round robin and let everyone introduce themselves. But I want to share what we're going to do this hour. We're going to talk about how law schools are engaging with generative AI, and also get few thoughts on what generative AI means for for the profession. So let's start with Dennis, if you don't mind.
Happy to start, and thank you, Shellie. I know how hard it is to do these events, so I think it's great you've been able to accomplish this so well. So I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm the director of the Michigan State University Center for Law, Technology, and Innovation, and I teach several legal tech and AI classes, and I also teach a class called Legal Technology, Literacy, and Leadership at the University of Michigan Law School. And for those of you who have the question, yes, I do have to remember which color of clothes I wear depending on where I'm at. And I describe myself as a really consistent and constant student of trying to learn more and more about AI.
Awesome. And we'll move to Kat.
Hey there, everyone. Shellie, thank you for including me. Great. I caught part of the last session. Amazing. So I am Kat Moon. I teach at Vanderbilt. I have a couple of titles. I guess three. I'm professor of the practice, and I co-direct our program on law and innovation with JB Rule, and I co-direct the Vanderbilt AI Law Lab, also called VAIL. And I've been teaching at Vanderbilt for 8 years, mainly around innovation and technology. My big focus right now is on how our profession can lead in making responsible choices with respect to the development and deployment of artificial intelligence. It's a big task, but I think we're up to it. And so I'm really focused on helping law students and young lawyers get the skills they need to lead us in this direction, because I think they're the future, if not the present, if you look around at kind of what's happening. But I'll stop there.
Awesome. Kelly, how about you go next?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Kelly Raker. I'm the Associate Program Director at the Duke Center on Law and Technology at Duke Law. And I have several different initiatives that I work with here around AI and emerging tech, including some design thinking workshops for students that inevitably involve technology and the solutions that the students come up with, and also building resources for the profession through our initiative around responsible AI for legal services. And just in general, really excited to be here and to have seen all the great stuff happening today. I think personally feel really passionate about building partnerships and finding ways to kind of build on the strengths of everyone across the profession and across the community to make everything better in the future. So thanks for having me.
And Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I am Jenny Wondracek. I am the director of the Law Library and a professor of legal research at Capital University. I don't currently hold a tech title, but prior to coming to Capital, I was the director of legal educational technology at UNT Dallas. And I have continued to work with legal tech and AI in particular.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Let's go ahead and dig in. And I would love to hear how you are incorporating generative AI tools into your curriculum or your programs in the work that you're doing on a daily basis. And let's just go with that same order.
This is what happens when you're on with a former student. They pick you to go first. So that's the so we're doing a number of things. So obviously at the Center for Law Technology Innovation, we've done a number of initiatives around AI. The things I want to focus on are the classes I teach. So and what MSU is doing. So I have taught for the last couple of years a class called AI in the Law, which is 3-credit overview class that I've kind of transformed over the years. We have so much demand for it that it's now being offered in the fall and the spring. We also have a legal research in AI class that got added last year. And I have just gotten approved what I call AI in the Law 2.0 class, which will be an advanced seminar that will be much more project focused, and it will be offered in the spring. And it's meant to be the continuation of the AI in Law class. I won't be teaching, so I'll be teaching one of each of those classes. And for those who might be close enough to Lansing to think about it, we will be looking for an AI and law professor for the spring. So something to think about. I also do an event I call the AI Studio, which is a hands-on prompting event to teach students about how to do prompting. We had something we tried called AI Makerspace, which was a drop-in so students could talk about and learn about things they were doing in AI. And in my class, we now have evolved to where there are 4 simulations around AI, 2 prompting projects. So one is a personal AI learning assistant. The other is what I call Capstone AI project. And they also do a final paper in that. So those are the things that we are currently doing right now at MSU.
It's in my turn now.
It is.
Okay. So through Poly programming and Veil programming, we offer a number of courses that either are focused specifically on generative AI or integrate it pretty substantially. So we launched the AI and Law practice class really like the first semester after ChatGPT took off. So I'm pretty sure we were at one of the first, if not the first schools to launch that. What was really cool though, is that before we launched that class, we started giving faculty workshops on integrating ChatGPT and getting our faculty really comfortable with what this technology is, what it does, what it can't do, all that good stuff. And so I'm super proud of the work we've done to get our students ready. And I have a couple of stories to tell on that I will share very quickly. But I want to emphasize that, you know, for this to really be effective in the law school setting, it needs to be more holistic than just dropping in a class or two, right? And that is not a challenge to take lightly. That is not an easy lift at all when you are working with a curriculum design that's essentially been set in stone for about 100 years now. So yeah, but I can say that the schools and everyone on this screen is actively engaged in this in your schools. But the schools who are doing this are creating opportunities for our students who literally are walking into, in the first year of practice, being on the AI practice group that is brand new in their law firm, right? Because they come out of school with skills that few of their colleagues in a law firm setting have. And so I really just can't emphasize enough how important it is just to figure out ways to expose students to this technology in safe ways. And that's why I say we're figuring out how to integrate it really in as many places in the curriculum as possible. So we launched, for instance, a legal research and writing class that is based on using these tools to do your work. Like that's the whole point of the class. that was launched this past semester by another Vail team member. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking now. We'll have more chance to share later.
Thank you, Kat. I love that conversation about working with faculty. I think I've been at the law school for about 7 years, and it's been really great just to see how many more classes every semester include AI, include emerging technologies. And really under the leadership of Jeff Ward, this has really been a great way that we've actually also seen this kind of infusion into the curriculum. For example, he teaches a 1L contracts class. It has lots of different kind of simulations in it. And in one simulation, the students actually review a non-disclosure agreement in the context of a private equity funding. And so they do that first the old school way of a Word document of a contract with a PDF of a playbook and fallback positions, et cetera. And then they do it a second time and apply AI and kind of imagine or critique the different workflows that could add some efficiency and some insight. So I think that's just one example of something that the students really love and respond so well to those examples. We have a lot of kind of lunchtime events and things that we'll bring in. One of our alums, Jim Wagner, came in. He runs a legal tech company and did some prompt engineering, kind of teaching the students. Every time the students were just like, "This is the best lunch session I've been to all semester." They're eager for it and really excited about it. And we have some other programs like our legal design derbies that have been focused on access to justice. And we've specifically partnered with Legal Aid of North Carolina. And as I mentioned, like inevitably those solutions involve AI. And I think the technology is changing so fast that it's really just fantastic to see the ideas and what students can imagine is in the future of AI and technology. I know we're going to talk more about that and kind of where things might be going. So I'll go ahead and pause there and pass it over to Jennifer.
So really, we don't have a tech department, so it's really been grassroots for AI. But we have made some major strides. This year, we had 5/6 of our 1Ls trained in AI in their LARW class. Due to some curricular changes next year, every single 1L will receive AI training in their legal research class, which I'm excited about. And we have been trying to also reach our upper level students. We hold a boot camp at the end of the year that we did both student training and we invited the legal community in for a CLE credit. And we held an all-day hands-on session. Or sorry, not all day. The boot camp was all day. The AI session was in the afternoon. So 3 hours of CLE we figured was more than enough for attorneys to try to convince them to come in on a Saturday. We're actively working to try to get the information out there. And this semester, I also taught AI in the law as a seminar for the first semester, and it was wonderful seeing the students' excitement about the different ways technology is being integrated, things like that. I will say I did spot my research assistant on the call. So I know I have at least one convert to the AI information education. So we're slowly working on it, but I'm a good example of a no budget grassroots kind of rollout.
And that goes in with the question that we got in the chat. Do you feel that law schools in general see AI as a fad or a fringe subject? Bob Ambrosi has written about the slow rates of adoption of AI in American law schools. How do we change this?
I'm going to take the position that it's a 100% yes on that, and that is the challenge. So what we're seeing are pretty small efforts. There's heavy resistance from the tenured faculty, and as Kat said, there's a belief out there that legal education was perfected about 100 years ago and doesn't need to change. So what I usually say to people, and they just kind of shake their heads at me, is that I'm beginning to see, like the beginning of the internet, when I felt that the beginning of the internet was historically as significant as the invention of the printing press, that perhaps generative AI, I'm not totally convinced, but it has the same feeling that generative AI is a transformative historical event. and one that I don't want to sit out. There are people with tenure who tell me they are perfectly comfortable sitting this one out completely because they'll retire or die in their jobs. Other than that, so I think there is, I think that's part of it, is to say, look at what's going on in the rest of the world and everywhere else, and how are we going to create the lawyers who can give legal advice to the people who live in a world of AI? There's a tremendous gap.
Kat.
Let's see if I can also lower my hand while I talk. Okay. So Vanderbilt just hired our first doctrinal professor with a specialty in AI and the law. And he is technically proficient. So it's not just someone who's writing about the law of AI. It is a person who is studying and doing serious scholarly research on the AI of law. So David Stein will be joining us. And I hope I was okay if I just told everyone that. We'll see. So, but with that said, we certainly have faculty members who absolutely believe we should be focusing on other things, right? And so a primary challenge we face, because everything is binary, it's either or, right? We are not very good at seeing third options or multiple options. We see it's really a mindset of scarcity, not abundance. And so if we're doing this AI thing, that means we can't do these other things. And so that mindset, I think, has us gripped. So there's that. Two, law school has not been designed, nor is it viewed by the bulk, the primary faculty who control things. Doctrinal faculty, tenured faculty make all the decisions in a law school setting for the most part. I fear that many of them, if not most, view this AI thing as practical skills training, and that's not why we exist, right? We teach law students how to think like a lawyer, and then it's up to their firms or wherever they go to train them to actually do the work. So, and again, it's either or. We don't imagine that there's this third way of existing that actually makes students very good at thinking like a 21st century lawyer, not a 20th or 19th century lawyer, and also prepares them to be excellent practitioners who can actually thrive in their work, right? So I fear until we can replace scarcity with abundance mindset, and we can not continue to view things in this either or black and white binary, that we're going to be stuck in this loop. And frankly, it's kind of like convincing law firms that they don't need to bill by the hour anymore when they're making, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars per partner. That they simply don't believe you. We are facing this overwhelming wave of applicants to law schools right now. Applications are through the roof. And we have accidentally got one of our biggest classes ever because everybody's coming. And so, you know, last thing I'll say is, how do we convince law schools that they need to change when people are beating down the doors to get in to what they're currently offering? So it's an interesting.
Jennifer.
So I agree with everything that's been said. It's also, it's improbable that you are going to be able to get someone who is not comfortable with the technology themselves to try to teach it. And so I haven't been pushing my faculty too hard in that direction. I am trying to push them to learn more about it, but you can also do damage with the AI is magic box idea. So I want people who are knowledgeable to be teaching it. But that said, I have had some colleagues who've jumped in wholeheartedly. I have one who is actually our longest serving faculty member here, who just asked me the other day, so how can I use this in my own research? Which is a fabulous baby step. So, and I think that's part of it, is we're not going to have its use overnight in every class, regardless of how many students think it should be. It's one of those things where I think each professor is going to have to be comfortable with it before we have them teach it. That said, again, we have had baby steps. I had one colleague who let his students use it for research this year. As far as I know, it's his first time allowing AI research use, which is fabulous. So slow but sure is how I'm trying to take it. I wish it were faster, but we've also seen what happens when it goes too fast with over 150 cases with hallucinations where people didn't check their sites. We've had lawyers get sanctioned. We've had lawyers get reprimanded, suspended from the practice of law. So misuse is scarier to me than just taking baby steps wading in. So my 2 cents, or my 2 cents. So
So that's a great segue into my next question. And I'm going to roll two questions into one. Have any of your institutions adopted policies on AI use in coursework and research? And then I'm going to roll in and also bring in law clinics and externships as well. Anybody want to start with that?
I'm happy to continue on. So the policy we've had in place for a while now is that it's at the professor's discretion, and they can allow as much or as little use as they want. I've helped professors craft statements that allow some use but not all use. They seem mostly worried about writing over research. So we've been working on adding language like that for faculty to select from. But we're really seeing more and more acceptance, which I think is great. For the faculty who don't want to use it, it falls under unauthorized assistance, just like if you asked your mom or dad to do your homework. So the main campus does not currently have policies, but they are working on an AI guidebook that will be applicable to the entire university. And I sit on that, and I've been helping them with that. They're a little uncertain about my sections that come out reading like a terms of service because it's written by a lawyer. But, it is what it is.
Any thoughts from any other panelists?
I made the mistake of, as people will know, of having a conversation with the provost at MSU and ending up on the Ethical AI Guidelines Committee. So we've written some things, and we're in the process of revising it. So I think that we're taking, I advocated, and we've done a statement of intention, which is sort of to say that we want MSU to sort of lead as a world-class institution in AI as it does in other things. And that sort of sets the expectations. So it's more positive, gives you a framework to interpret things. We've gone with the professor makes the decision, and done a number of things, but I would say it's fairly if I can use this word, progressive in some ways. But I think what we find, and I was curious if other people do at institutions, is that people just want a policy, right? It's like when you're a lawyer and your client says, we need an AI policy. They don't care what the policy is. They just want to have a policy. And so when people try to apply it, it becomes really confusing. And so with AI changing as rapidly as it has, the policies, the more specific they are, the more outdated they get really quickly. And so I think there's this overlay of FERPA as every application stuffs AI into the tools, that these general statements about use or non-use of AI become really difficult to figure out what anybody means. And like I now have Microsoft Copilot popping up everywhere. because I now get that through MSU, and I think the policy when it was written didn't really, plan for that to be the case. So I think the policy thing is difficult, and if you just delegate to, I mean, I just think you have to have that top level thing where you say, here's what we want, and so it's great to say, here's our intention. We want to be to work with this new technology in a way that a world-class institution does. I think that's a better way to go than to say, like, when in doubt, do not use, which I think is a very problematic approach, but common.
We operate under the same, each faculty member has the discretion about when and how and if they can use and allow their students to use generative AI. But we also do have a Duke community standard overall that says any unauthorized use of generative AI is cheating. And so I think that that's not surprising. I think that's sorry, I got distracted by a cat. I think that is great in terms of academic freedom and the ability to kind of adapt and move along. But this is absolutely where our faculty were really stressed out when ChatGPT was first released. There were lots of conversations and meetings about that. But I also think it's helpful to think about the law schools are within higher education. And my master's was in higher education and student affairs. And, it's still a process. There's still a lot of folks in higher ed generally that are not using AI. And then, of course, many that are. And so I think that as we see more law firms training summer associates, we see more products rolling out, like Dennis was talking about. I think this is just going to keep coming out and keep becoming part of the ethos. And while people might want a policy that is so super clear of yes or no, you can't do this, that's just not really how this works. And that's not how we're going to be able to think about the use cases and the ethics of it all. Hopefully Kat can join us soon when the rain is not bugging her screen here.
Yeah, I want to add that that the students are changing rapidly. So I was at a like an event for incoming students, lessons for next year, and there were 3 or 4 of them who talked to me about like how enthused they were about the AI classes and what we were doing. And one of them said, I have a question for you. And it's what AI certification should I get before I start law school? Right? That's a completely different mindset than what you're hearing in the schools themselves. And there is on the employment side, I mean, people have mentioned this, that the employers are looking at these lessons coming out to do AI work. And I've had recent graduates and a student who is working part-time in my class last semester who were immediately on the AI decision-making committees and welcomed on there. So I think there's a number of things happening, but I keep going back and I say, if we don't take a look at how the world is changing, then are we creating lawyers who can even give reasonable advice to people who are living in this world of AI?
Absolutely. Kat?
I'll chime in real quick. Apologies for that crazy view of underneath my umbrella. I had this great plan to stay outside, and yet the weather. So I am on a cross-disciplinary AI and ethics committee. We're developing AI ethics curriculum for the university. We have a new school, the College of Connected Computing. And don't ask me to explain what that means, because I'm not quite sure, even though I'm on the faculty committee for it. But with that said, I agree with all the things that have been pointed out about the policy and how quickly the technology is changing and problems, basically problems with approaching this like we've approached everything else in the past, right? It's just, again, we need, like, it's not binary, it's not either or, we need this third way of looking at things, or multiple ways. I also believe that we need to be educating law students to think about the ethics of AI beyond how they use it ethically in their practice. Because lawyers are leaders. They lead across the spectrum in our country, or at least we're supposed to. Again, I will refrain from further comment on what's happening around us, but we need to think much more broadly and deeply and intentionally about what teaching the ethics around AI to law students means. And and really, this should excite our faculty because it does go into really all these doctrinal issues. And that may be an area around which you can kind of bring people on board to think more intentionally and deeply about these things in a very collaborative way, and not just how you use AI to do research, right?
So that's a great segue into our next discussion point. How are your schools guiding students on the ethical use of AI, especially in client context? Anybody want to jump in?
I'm happy to.
Jennifer?
Ethics is one of those things that I have been hammering the students about for a long time. And I start in my 1L class, probably to their dissatisfaction, since they're like, no, research and writing. And I'm like, ethics. I brought a law practice technology class with me from UNT Dallas, and I have since turned it over to two very wonderful technology trainers from two of our big firms, but they always invite me back the first class or two to talk about ethics, because that's really why we're here. Is, we have to practice ethically. Actually, I was thinking when Kat was talking about teaching all of this information, not just how to use it, or even just how the ethics of using AI to avoid sanctions. Really, it's a tech competency issue, which Kelly can tell you I have been talking about for a very long time. We need our attorneys to be technologically competent, more than just AI. They need to be technologically competent in a lot of different ways. Just even stopping and thinking, because they are advising clients. They are doing this work. You can't say, well, I didn't know how to e-file and they stopped accepting filings at the courthouse, so thus I can't file anything anymore. Like that doesn't work. It's just like, responding to voicemail messages. That's technology. You have to do that. So I think really integrating more than just AI, but also general technology needs to be a change in the curriculum. I'm also one of those mean professors that make my students learn how to use Word when they're learning how to write. And it's so mean. And yet I have students come back and say, can you remember to remind them to use styles? It makes life so much easier. So technology in general, I think, needs to be pushed, including AI. And I do think Kat's right. We need to think in the grander scheme. And that may also include things like the environmental impact of AI and how we can make sure that we can use the technology, but not ruin the world in our wake.
Yeah, Shellie, my approach has been, and I always ask students, like, what do they talk about technology competence in their professional responsibility class? So it's improved. There's about two people who said yes recently, and that's in both law schools. So as important as the technology competence role is in a practice, that isn't filtering, back into law schools. So I start out all my classes with the technology competence rule and the ethics piece. And then later, when we start to talk about responsible AI, then that's where I go into the much deeper ethics, because that is really important. Because one of my points that I want them to think about, and this goes back to what Kat said, is we need to be part of the decision making. Because right now, there's Silicon Valley dudes, sitting in front of screens right now making AI decisions with profound impact. And they're being part of, White House commissions and other things like that. And there are people who've been around AI and responsible, ethical AI for a long time who are excluded from the conversation. And that's another place I have concern about the approach in law and in legal education is if we decide we're sitting this AI out, then everybody else is going to make the decisions and they're happy to rat around lawyers. So that's my approach: legal ethics first, and then try to get people to move out into a much wider sense of ethics.
I just wanted to note a couple of things we have going on at Duke Law that are for students, but actually also for everyone in the profession. So we have an initiative called the Responsible AI Legal Services as kind of a network. And we actually recently put out some use cases publication that was compiled by our working groups. And I'll throw that link in the chat, but it's a free network, free resource. We publish everything under Creative Commons. And so we have a list of, like, I don't know, 50 or 60 use cases, and we've only written the first 10, but we have some others in draft that are coming soon. But really these kind of like one pagers of like, why would I use summarizing meeting notes, or why would I use AI to help me draft the first draft of a memo? But it includes some like specific legal considerations. And so while you could give it to anyone who's not illegal, they might find it useful of why they might want to summarize their meeting notes. It has specific kind of legal questions to think about as it relates to ethics, as it relates to your client communications, as it relates to kind of like frequently asked questions. And then the other piece that we're really working on right now too is we're hosting a series with ILS, the Institute for the Advancement of Legal Services, legal system, sorry, and on the intersection of AI, unauthorized practice of law, and access to justice. And so if you liked hearing from Quentin at our last session, you can hear from him again on Thursday, Thursday afternoon with Jim Sandman and Lois Lupica and Natalie Knowlton to really kind of talk about what, especially when it comes to consumer facing legal services, products that are being developed for the general public. How are we regulating those products, regulating the practice of law, and what could it be in the future? And so we're having a kind of 3-series webinar, and then going to have some workshops. We're actually going to try to build a toolkit to help regulators and other folks think about what this could look like in the future. And so for us, those are kind of trying to hold space for conversations around ethics, around what the future might be, what it could be. And I'll drop the link to that as well. But I think that these are just some spaces where it is for law students, but it's also for other folks all across the profession. Because we really see these things as connected, right? Like there are things we might do just with law students, but a lot of what we're doing is also helping them think about what their practice is going to be in the future.
I'll just chime in real quickly to point out that our stance as a profession is that it is our ethical obligations that separates us from every other human who might be able to help people solve legal problems, right? Lawyers are special because we have this code of professional responsibility. And if truly that is our North Star and a basis for us having a monopoly, as we do, then shouldn't our ethical framework actually be the framework for how we teach all of this, how we learn all of this, how we deploy all of this, right? And this is speaking very narrowly about the ethical use of AI when it comes to law practice. I don't fear, I suggest, I actually am applauding it. I observe that the pressure that generative AI is putting on so many systems in so many ways we've always done things, pressure both process-wise, systemically, financially, like all of it, that all of the failures that we've just been living with for decades now are not going to be avoidable or ignorable anymore. What I'm positive about is that I'm looking across the screen and I can scroll through the names of people attending this event, and I feel very optimistic that we're going to come out of this better, right? We're going to come out of this better equipped and able to serve and help more people, because people like the people on this screen are in law schools training law students to use these tools ethically, responsibly, and do it in a way that is a net benefit. for the people doing the work, the people they're helping in society. So, but I keep going back to, like, our ethics is what justifies our monopoly. So why are we not starting with that in all of this?
So that's really, we really need about 3 or 4 hours for this session. So I would love to hear from everyone, thinking about generative AI, thinking about the ABA model rule point 1 requirement that lawyers be technologically competent. What do you imagine the legal profession will look like in 5 years regarding the use of technology and all of the tools that are available currently? So, anybody want to jump in and go first?
It's hard enough to imagine 5 weeks, right? Let alone five years with AI. I was talking with one of my deans today who's just totally enthusiastic about some uses of AI, but we were talking how in this sort of bizarre way that the best class to have in law school right now, traditional law class, would be in agency law, because the AI agent thing is coming, and that's the principles of that are most likely to map onto AI. So I think it's hard to predict. I mean, I look at the internet and I always feel that there's this notion that the internet routes around problems, and that one of my insights this year teaching AI was that law is a complex system that's trying to manage and regulate complex systems of complex systems. So almost by definition, all the little point solutions we try are going to have all kinds of unintended consequences. So I think that makes it really hard to predict. And that's why I moved in my class to this approach of using scenario planning matrices to kind of predict or look at possible futures and to discuss them. So I would look to that. But my feeling is that where all the money is going, the friction that lawyers are perceived to be, the willingness of lawyers to take themselves out of the conversation, and also the students who I think are really good, who are interested in AI, are not ultimately looking to practice. They're looking for other career paths. I don't think the legal profession is going to look like anything like we think now. I think it's going to be much smaller, much more limited, kind of defined into and circumscribed into small areas, probably around dispute resolution in the existing court system and not much else. Could be 10 years, but that would be my guess, that we're going to see some pretty transformative impact. Now, I might have said that 40 years ago about AI as well. So law, the legal profession can resist really well, but I think there's a lot of different pressures on, and especially in times of economic uncertainty.
So interesting, Dennis, because I was actually going to say the opposite, that I suspect that the legal profession is going to widen in terms of, are we going to have more innovation attorneys, more chief innovation officers, community justice workers, founders of legal tech companies who see themselves as part of the legal profession, even if they're not trained as a lawyer? Are we going to give paralegals more responsibilities in different ways? Because of that justice gap, because of how many people are underserved by our system, I think I talk to students a lot about what kind of skills are changing that they might need and what kind of job titles that might exist in the future. And even just in the last couple of years, we've seen some changes in the types of jobs that are being posted. And having skills in change management, having skills and knowledge around data privacy and security is much different than it was even 5 years ago. Maybe coding, prompt engineering. I think that you're never going to have people who don't still need to have empathy and the ability to talk and counsel with someone and understand the business side of what they might be doing. I think there's lots of still different skills that are really important. But there is there are big changes coming in terms of what we've seen, jobs just kind of being created, especially in the really big firms. But even like our legal aid of North Carolina, I know Kat sits on the Innovation Labs advisory board as well. But to have a chief of innovation, I think is really different and new. And actually, just being at the Equal Justice Conference last week with you, Shellie, I feel like we met more folks in the legal aid world who have titles where innovation is part of their title, and so they might be practicing law in some capacities, but they're also really working on how do we help people in lots of different ways that it doesn't look like it did 10 years ago or even 5 years ago sometimes.
Go ahead.
So I have both great hope and great fear. So I can't tell you how many attorneys I have run into who are like, you can't make me learn to use Word better because no one's going to care how much I bill for this brief I write. I'm like, I bet you if they saw the difference, they'd care. Or I literally had someone tell me, if I have to learn anything about technology, I may as well hang up my law degree. I'm like, you might. So we have this group that don't think they're going to have to evolve. And many of those are in the upper echelon of law practice. So I don't know how fast law is going to evolve, even though the technology will definitely evolve. I actually am very optimistic, though, about the smaller firms, about legal aid, and about a lot of the newer attorneys who are excited about it. And that's not to say that we don't have more experienced attorneys who are excited about it, but it's one of those, I don't know who's going to win. I didn't predict we would be where we are today with our government, so I don't know that I can predict where we will be in 5 years with law practice accurately. But I do know the technology is going to pull some of them forward. Whether or not it's enough to affect the whole practice, I don't know. But I'm trying to adapt Kelly's optimism. And I do believe we are seeing the legal profession widen rather than shrink because we're bringing in more types of legal professionals. It's not just all attorneys and paralegals anymore.
So, Kat, I know you have thoughts.
I'm just going to say this. All of this is a choice. We are in a moment where we can make good intentional choices, or we can continue to make really crappy ones. And so by educating law students, by educating the profession, by inviting people to join us in this discovery, by promoting curiosity over fear, by promoting the mindsets that will help us thrive in abundance instead of shut down in either or black and white scarcity mode, we can make better choices. Some individuals are going to continue to make crappy choices, and I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that enough of us are going to make really good intentional choices that we're going to bring everybody along with us. But we're in a moment, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I have no idea. I'm just going to try to stay optimistic.
So, Kat, you know my daughter, and so part of my thing is I believe in the young people and the students, and I think that what they're going to do, what they're capable of, the projects they just did, the papers they just did in my class are amazing to me. I really like where they're going. I like what they're going to do. There's part of me that says we kind of need to get out of their way a little bit. We've been holding people back. We're afraid they're going to cheat. They're going to do all these terrible things, which sometimes I think tells us more about the psychology of the person making the comments than about the people that they're commenting on. But it's this younger generation coming in. I mean, the coolest stuff I've heard about with AI is being done by 7 and 9-year-olds, like amazing stuff that I don't think I'm going to be able to keep up with. So that's what's intriguing to me. And I have the optimism that Kelly and Jenny have about providing legal services. I just don't think that it's going to be by lawyers. And I think that it's not going to be by people who have to go to law school. And in a time of, in higher education, probably tremendous, but I would say tremendous, but significant budget cuts. I'm not sure how long the model is going to sustain in the way that it is. That's my optimistic note.
Well, we have reached the end of our time, and I'm sure that the audience, like me, has many questions. But so we will make sure that we provide information on how to hear more from these this wonderful panel. Through their many different, and several have podcasts, several have websites and blogs and things. So we will make sure that we include those links on the event page for today, along with all of the recordings. Thank you to our panel for being here. I appreciate your time very much. I know how busy you all are, so I appreciate you took the time. Thank you to the audience members, especially those that have been with us the whole afternoon. I know it was a big time commitment, so we really appreciate you being here. And we hope that you found this helpful, but we would love to hear feedback, whether it's good or bad. So have a great afternoon, and I hope you come back and join us for another event in the future.